All right, folks, welcome back to the Steve Malzberg Show, hour number 3. Now, I don't know if you're caught up in this, but if you're a connoisseur of the financial goings-on and you watch, of business and read business and Newsmax business and all that, you know that Alibaba is more than just a name. People get, whoa, because tomorrow is the IPO for the company known as Alibaba Group Holding Ltd. Now, you may not know exactly what it is, but we're going to find out exactly what Alibaba does, what their stock is going to do or might do. And joining us to talk about all this is Gordon Chang, lawyer, author, television pundit, and LIGNET contributor. And among his great books, Nuclear Showdown, North Korea Takes on the World, The Coming Collapse of China. Gordon, it's great to talk to you again, sir.
Thank you so much.
All right, why don't you explain to folks what Alibaba is in the first place?
Alibaba is a Chinese e-commerce company, but it's not just an e-commerce company. It is the e-commerce company. It has 80% of the Chinese market. And that, of course, means it's about topped out. It's very interesting that Alibaba has going to probably have the world's biggest initial public offering. Its shares are going to start trading tomorrow. And people are going to watch this because everyone has been thinking about Facebook. Facebook had this enormous IPO. It sort of tanked in the beginning. Now it's recovered. People are starting to wonder whether Alibaba will be the next Facebook.
Right, and Facebook started at around, I don't know, was it near 30, then went down to 19 or so, and now it's over 75 or 76, all within a very short time frame. So tell me, in your view, Gordon, is Alibaba a good investment?
Well, over the short term, there probably will be some pop to it, as they are with most IPOs. This one has been priced a bit more conservatively because the underwriters are concerned about the Facebook problem. But long term, I think this is a very bad deal for investors from a number of different reasons. First of all, the structure that Alibaba is using is illegal under Chinese law. Under Chinese law, foreigners are not allowed to hold interest in Chinese internet companies, and they've got around this with something called a variable interest entity structure, which means investors are going to buy shares in a Cayman Islands company. The Chinese Supreme Court has held this to be illegal. And matter of fact, Jack Ma, who is the leading light behind Alibaba, used the illegality of his own structure to disadvantage a foreign shareholder, which was Yahoo. So there's a lot that's not to like about this. But more important, from a business point of view, this is an e-commerce company. Consumption in China is stagnating and may even be falling, as we can see from some independent data. And that means that Alibaba's growth prospects in China are not what people say they are. Jack Ma, just a couple of days ago, talked about Alibaba growing in Europe and the United States. That's a real indication that he doesn't think very much of his own China market. And that's what they're selling tomorrow. They're selling the promise of the China market. I don't think it's there.
Well, foreign investment in China, as you kind of alluded to, it's going down. Why is that?
Yeah, for the last 2 months, foreign direct investment in China has fallen. It's now off for the entire year. And there are a number of reasons. Part of it is because the Chinese economy is stumbling. People are very worried about the direction of economic growth. And also, there has been, over more than a year or so, a concerted campaign to undermine foreign business in China, which is really best symbolized by the highly discriminatory anti-monopoly investigations against foreign companies, especially U.S. companies. We've seen a number of U.S. companies being targeted, and now companies are starting to feel that they're not welcome in China. So you put a number of these things together where China is basically closing itself off from the rest of the world, and there is real concern about the direction of that country. And I think Alibaba is going to be affected by this, at least in the long term, because here you've got a company that is very much going to be dependent on foreign investors into the company. And I think we're going to see them have second thoughts not too far down the road.
When when you think of China in a non-business perspective of it, you think of repression, political repression, et cetera. How much does that play into the concern that investors have or should have when dealing with China?
Well, I think, of course, they should have those concerns because China's becoming increasingly repressive. That shows instability in the political system. And then that's important. But, you know, most investors, most of the time, aren't concerned about the nature of an authoritarian state as long as they see stability and money. But, you know, over the last couple months or so, there has been a change in attitude for a number of reasons, and investors are now starting to talk about China's especially belligerent external policies and also their problems at home, because there's obvious distress in the political system. That does, and it's now starting to affect the business calculation. So I think we're now starting to see investors look at China in a very different light than they did a year or 2 years ago when everything was fine and they were just so happy to put money in there. Now we are starting to see real problems in the Chinese economy and the Chinese political system at the same time.
Does China manipulate their books? I mean, can we trust what we get from them from an accounting point of view, so to speak?
No, you can't. And that's why there have been so many scandals involving Chinese companies that have listed offshore, because the books aren't really prepared according to the same standards around the rest of the world. There's a couple other things going on. Also, the macroeconomic numbers coming out of Beijing's National Bureau of Statistics are not accurate in the view of most people. And there are a couple of reasons for that. First of all, China is very hard to try to reduce to some numbers, but also because of political directions, those numbers are fudged. And usually in a time of downturn, the numbers are fudged upwards, is what we're seeing right now. So instead of China growing at 7.4%, which is what they claim for the last calendar quarter, it's probably the country's growing 1, 2, maybe 3%. And that's a real problem because in order to create that growth, China has been incurring massive amounts of debt. Now they won't be able to service that, and that really means debt crisis.
Wow, I thought they were controlling us with our debt. But let me ask you this. So you watch the financial shows, for instance, Kramer on CNBC, okay, talking about how fund managers are going to be selling stuff to buy, to have enough cash on hand to buy Alibaba, and how this is going to be the biggest thing ever. What is it that they, let me put it this way, what is it that they don't know that you know, or what is it that they know, which I doubt, that you don't know? I mean, why the mass hysteria over something as you've described in such blunt terms and terms that seem straightforward? What is it that they don't get or that you don't get?
Well, I think there are a couple of things going on here. People have gotten used to Chinese growth over 35 years. And so it's very difficult for the financial community to adjust to think about a China which is growing at very low rates and which is on the edge of a debt crisis and property meltdown. And so there's, of course, a natural reluctance to consider these things. But now you're starting to see the financial community come around on some of that stuff. Also, there's financial motivation to hike this. When you have the world's largest IPO, a lot of money gets spread around Wall Street. There's a lot of incentive to talk this up. And so therefore, I think that's going to explain a lot of it. Also, Alibaba has had phenomenal growth up to now, but I think people are not looking at the trend lines. They're not really looking at the business of the company, and they're also not looking at Alibaba's competition, which could really take a big bite out of Alibaba's earnings. So, for instance, there are other companies there which have, I think, going forward, better prospects than Alibaba. You sort of put all that together and you sort of, people are going to be willing to say, I can make money. And every time you have an IPO, you can make money, at least in the short term.
Yeah, very quickly, if you're well connected. Give me a couple of, if you want to, who you think might have better prospects than Alibaba in that field.
Yeah, the main competitor for Alibaba right now is a company called Tencent Holdings, which is listed in Hong Kong. Tencent is the social media player in China, and it is better management. And the other thing about it is, for Tencent and Alibaba, they're trying to invade each other's turf. Tencent is much easier for them to monetize their social media base than it is for Alibaba to develop a social media base and to sell to new customers. So I think Tencent is a much better bet in the long run. And by the way, these two companies, when they're involved in slugging it out, they're going to erode both of their margins as the competition becomes fierce. So you're going to see Alibaba with, I think, much lower earnings. And the same thing's going to be true for Tencent, because they are going to slug each other until only one of them survives.
I got to tell you, Gordon, just fascinating and an education, really. And really, you know, really a view that's running counter to all the hype that I've been bombarded with by watching and listening and reading. And thank you for that. I really appreciate it. We'll have you back soon. I want to talk to you about other things as well, and appreciate your time, sir.
Thank you so much.
All right. Gordon Chang, ladies and gentlemen, LIGNET contributor. And, of course, also check out his books, The Coming Collapse of China, Nuclear Showdown, North Korea Takes on the World. I haven't spoken to Gordon in quite some time, but we used to talk about China and the threat they pose to this country on many, many occasions under different incarnations of the Steve Malzberg Show. Anyway, when we come back, and we are coming back, the editor-in-chief of Truth Revolt and also editor-at-large of Breitbart News, we're talking about Ben Shapiro right here on the Steve Malzberg Show, Newsmax Television.